And again, my name is Allie Orwig with the Indiana Rural Health Association, but at this point, I would like to turn it over to Patrick Frazier. Patrick?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me on the webinar this afternoon. Today, we want to talk a little bit about working through the challenges of scaling up your business, scaling up your organization without all the drama. So with that, I kind of wanted to begin with a little background. I'll be your host or guest speaker today. My name is Pat Frazier. I'm a Gravitas International coach since 2014, but I've actually been an executive coach since 2005. I carry a Six Sigma Yellow Belt. I also carry certifications in several other great organizations, Adventures in Attitude, Total Quality Improvement, Resource Associates Corporation, which is now Trusted Advisors. My background also includes a good part of my career with Citigroup, American Airlines, United Airlines, TWA, as well as many volunteer interests in the community that I'm a part of. As a coach, I wanted to remind you that coach is someone that tells you what you don't want to hear. Maybe they'll see something that you don't want to see. Maybe they'll tell you something that you may not like, but it's all for the purpose that you could become the person, the leader, the player that you feel you're called to be. So I'm very careful to explain the difference between a coach and a consultant and a teacher. While I wear many of those hats, I do serve my clients as a coach. I thought it would be good, just in the light of what's going on in the world around us, just to start with some good news, if that would be okay. We're all in the midst of these unprecedented times with the COVID-19 crisis, but there is good news out there. More than 300,000 people have already recovered from the virus. WHO is say there are now over 20 coronavirus vaccines in development, which is very exciting. Air pollution plummets. Athletes, sports teams, and others are pledging to pay the wages of arena employees. You hear about school districts all across the country opening up doors to serve meals for kids and families. You see communities and countries coming together, opening up new lanes of free entertainment, discounted services, and it's just amazing every day to kind of see the new ways that people are reaching out to help one another and serve one another. I remember that a quote from Fred Rogers during these times, and we have been through a couple of these, but when I was a boy, I would see scary things in the news, and my mother would say to me, look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping. And I think that's a great quote to remember during these times. And I always like to start my meetings or webinars or speaking engagements with, what's the good news that's happening around us? Because we certainly hear enough of the bad news around us. So if we're talking about scaling up our business amidst, it seems there's a lot of drama these days. Certainly the COVID crisis has introduced some drama, but even prior to that, drama is present in our businesses, in our organizations. So I'm wondering, so what's the problem that we have to solve? Is it really the drama that's the problem, or is there something beneath that? And where's that drama coming from? What are the barriers or obstacles to growth? Well, here's what we know, is we know that any business, doesn't matter what industry, what geography, what the demographics of the people participating in that organization, that there's three common barriers to growth. It's either leadership development, it's some sort of a scalable infrastructure, or it's marketing effectiveness. So generally, the issues that present themselves can be boiled down to one of those three barriers. Then the problem becomes, well, where can I find a business model that helps me get what I want for my business, for my clients, for my employees, for the community that I serve? And more importantly, where can I find a model that helps me get what I want out of life? And what would that model look like if we had that? If we had a model that created an environment that reduced the drama, I'm afraid that we would never totally eliminate the drama, but what can we do to reduce that drama or friction in the environment? Well, it might have a framework for growth. In other words, it might be a set of rules, guidelines, procedures, and tools, but a framework that's designed for growth, right? We can't have a framework for maintenance or a framework for exit, but it's one that's more built for growth and speed. It would have great content. It would have opportunities for us all to learn along the way, which, by the way, if you're looking to 2x the size of your company, you better be willing to 3x your rate of learning. So we should probably have good content and a good framework for learning. And another important element or component might be a guide, an advisor, a coach, somebody to show you the way, somebody to hold you accountable as you go through your growth journey together. So the business model that would reduce the framework or reduce the drag or the friction in our ascent or our attempts at scaling up might contain these 3 or 4 elements. Let's take a look at a couple of the pieces or parts in that growth framework, something that would be agile, something that would be scalable and comprehensive. It would have the ability to plan collaboratively. We encourage teams to do strategic thinking, execution, planning as a team rather than a single individual, or even worse, a single consultant that comes in to try to run your business. We want to do this as part of a senior executive leadership team collaboratively, have a roadmap. We would utilize tools continuously, the right tool for the right problem to continuously improve. And we would assess our progress frequently. Think, do, check, repeat, right? So when you use the right tools with the right framework, you get the right results. As a coach, that's what we do, is we help organizations decide what's the right thing to do at the right time with the right resources to get the right results. And when we do that, we see environments that have less friction, less obstacles, and less drama ultimately. So building a plan collaboratively, what if you had a growth roadmap that says, here's where we're going and here's how we're going to get there? And rather than a strategic plan, what if we had a growth roadmap that said, all in one page, basically what our core ideology is, our strategy, targets, goals, and accountabilities. The right toolkit would be something where we have something that's simple, easy for leadership teams and action teams to get their brains wrapped around simply in a one-page exercise, something that's practical, something that's relevant to whatever challenges or issues that we're facing, and something that has a bias for action or is actionable, that produces activities that lead to a different set of outcomes. So the key here is getting the right tool for the right job. With the process and tools that we use, we tend to look at over 80 different leadership exercises and 20 different subject matter experts or thought leaders, and drawing upon the collective intelligence of so many thought leaders around us. And then the last piece is to assess our progress frequently. Um, Take a look at an agile growth checklist where we look at 7 different areas of our business, and we ask deep probing questions in those areas that precipitate thought and result in actions that lead to desirable outcomes. And by the way, we have adapted that growth checklist for the COVID-19 crisis to help our businesses focus in these 7 areas, specifically in areas that we know are subject to stress and drama in the COVID-19 crisis. So let's take a look at the 7 areas just quickly, and just kind of break those into bite-sized pieces. The first 7 is leadership. It's said, John Maxwell would say, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I remember many years ago first hearing that quote and thinking, that pretty much sums it up, right? So let's take a look at our leadership team. In other words, is our leadership team authentic, healthy, and aligned? And that begins with the CEO or the owner or the founder. That very personal question, are they authentic? Are they healthy? Are they taking care of themselves? Are they aligned? One of my favorite authors in this space or subject matter experts is a fellow by the name of Patrick Lencioni, obviously, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, but also Kevin Lawrence has got some great work in the area of putting your oxygen mask on first. Because as the senior leader of an organization, you need to be healthy. You need to be at fighting weight, right? As we go through the crisis today, or the challenges tomorrow, or the opportunities ahead of us. So making sure that we're healthy and ready to take on. Some of the key questions that we look at in this particular attribute is, does each executive have a written and shared personal purpose plan? In other words, why do they exist? What is their calling in life? And what is it from a very personal perspective that they feel called to do? What's the dent they want to make in the planet? You see, if we understand what the executive's purpose is, then that purpose should be aligned with the organizational purpose. They're either in or out, they're with or they're without the organization. And we find that our executives are knitted together by a common purpose, some greater good that they want to accomplish. And it begins with a personal purpose plan. Our executives need to share on a quarterly basis a health check-in. Is everybody on the executive team at fighting weight? Are they hitting on all cylinders? Are they ready to lean into whatever the organization needs in order to accomplish their desired outcomes? We look at executive teams and trust and commitment and accountability, as Patrick Lencioni would say in the 5 dysfunctions of a team. We, as an executive team, would regularly review our strategy, right? Where is it, what is it that that sets us apart? What is it that's unique, right? And how are we executing on that strategy? And what are the results that we're seeing from that strategy and execution? And the executive team participates in learning and continuous development, and implements a strategy to be leaner, meaner, better, faster, smarter every quarter. So as I mentioned earlier, if you want to 2x your company, you need to make sure that you 3x your rate of learning, and that begins with our executive teams. So the second attribute that we look at is strategy. And strategy is something that we take a particular time and attention to. Perhaps uh, you've been driving in the rain sometime, or got caught driving in the rain. You realize, gosh, I should have replaced my wipers. It's not a good time to be caught in the rain with a bad set of windshield wipers, because it obviously can be very dangerous for us to do that. Well, without a clearly defined strategy, clearly defining what our vision is and what our values are for the organization, and what's our purpose and what's our why do we exist as an organization, without great clarity in those elements of strategy, it can feel like we're driving in the rain with a bad set of windshield wipers. So what we want to do is we want to work with executive teams and leadership teams to define what their strategy is, what makes them unique. I often challenge executives, how can you state for me your strategy in a simple sentence? And that generally causes a pause, and they find that it's really not that easy, that they haven't done that. And then I continue and say, well, if you can't state it simply, then how do other members in the organization, how can we expect them to execute a strategy that we can't clearly define? You see, Albert Einstein said it the best, I think. He says, if you can't explain it simply, you simply just don't understand it well enough. And I love his observation in this area. So we really need to sweat out the details of stating what our strategy is in a simple sentence, so that we can communicate that to the depths of our organization. Some of the things that we look at are the organization's strategy to provide a unique and valuable position. And the key here is unique and valuable. We don't want to just be better than the next guy. We want to be unique from everybody else in the space that we participate. So let's look at the competitive landscape. Let's look at our key activities that show alignment between our systems, processes, and sub-activities. Let's understand how we make money and make sure that everybody on our team understands the core economic engine. In other words, what drives profits for our organization? And let's make that scale visible to everyone. Let's understand as an organization what our 10-year BHAG is and what our 3-year highly achievable goals are. Let's make sure that we clarify the qualitative and quantitative targets so that everybody in the organization understands the target that we're trying to hit. Many times we look at a SWOT exercise, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And we say, how can our strengths be leveraged in order to achieve our desired outcome? How can our weaknesses be shored up so that they're not exposed? What opportunities are out there that we can use our strengths and our core competencies in order to provide a unique service, a unique and valuable service to the world? And what are the threats that are external to us that we need to mitigate? This is really an important exercise, especially now amidst the COVID-19 crisis. We can look at our strengths that we have that set us apart from all the others. We can look at the weaknesses that are now exposed by this crisis. And yes, there are opportunities today that weren't present 30 or 45 days ago. And obviously there's some threats to our organization that we need to mitigate. So all of this falls into the attribute of strategy. And we would want a full conversation around that so that we get some clarity. The third area that we look at is execution. Execution, it accounts for about 80% of the reasons that companies fail. About 96% of companies today fail to scale. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they go bankrupt or out of business. It just means they may have reached a point in their growth trajectory where they're just not growing quite as fast or even at all as they once enjoyed. But 80% of the reasons for failing to scale are because of poor execution disciplines. In other words, do the people and processes convert top line revenue to strong bottom line profit? You see, revenue, it said, is vanity, but margin is sanity, right? So that profit margin is something that's very important to us as a business, and we want to make sure that everything that we do, people and processes, line up to produce a strong bottom line profit. Execution disciplines are really just three things. They're what are our priorities? What are the metrics or data to against those priorities? How can we tell if we're achieving those priorities? And then what are our meeting rhythms? How do we communicate? Who do we communicate? How do we communicate better, faster than all the competitors around us? So let's take a look at some of the questions that we look at. Again, as a coach, I don't have all the answers, but I sure have a lot of questions. And these questions allow us to gain clarity. And you see, when we have great clarity, it gives us courage. When we have courage, we act. And with actions, we see results. So the organization must have annual, quarterly, and personal priorities. And we need to look at things in a 13-week sprint. And you'll hear us talk many times about what are your 90-day rocks or what are your quarterly rocks? What are those big things that we need to get done this quarter in order to achieve our annual goals or our 3-year highly achievable goals? And that requires the executive team to look at this annually, to look at it quarterly, to look at it weekly as necessary. We need to look at 3 to 5 priorities every quarter and every month, right? What are our priorities? And make sure that everybody is aligned on the same priorities. We need to make sure that managers, leaders, departments have this 13-week sprint plan. We like to look at a quarter, 3 months is actually a 13-week sprint, right? Let's just sprint to the next quarter, and then let's figure out what the next quarter looks like and sprint through it. That's what we mean by an agile growth system, right? So we want companies that are in scale-up mode to be agile. In the fourth area, profit, we look at basically, do we have enough cash to fuel our growth? The area of profit, we talk about in order to scale up without all the drama, we have to run a profitable business. You see, we can generate a lot of revenue, massive amounts of revenue, but if it's not generated in the right areas, and by that I mean, are we creating a profit margin? We can actually go out of business even though we're generating a lot of revenue. So we have to make sure that we're generating revenue, the right kind of revenue that contributes to our profit. When we run a profitable business, that creates liquidity. In other words, liquidity is the amount of capital that you have on hand readily available to invest back into the business. With liquidity, it creates opportunities for growth. In other words, for us to grow and scale up our business. So this attribute of profit is really important. And we find that many organizations, 500 or fewer employees, tend to struggle in this area. So we want to talk about, do you have all the cash you need to fuel the growth or to execute your strategy as you defined earlier? So we'll take a look at our cash conversion cycle. You know, it's interesting. The cash conversion cycle contains really three components or four components. Every business sells people stuff, they make or buy stuff, they deliver stuff, and they bill or collect for stuff. It doesn't really matter what business you're in, but every business has those four key components. We want to take a look at those four components and how effective are we converting cash in and out of our system. How long does it take us in the sales process? How long does it take us to make, build, or buy? How long does it take us to deliver our product or service? And how long does it take us to collect for that? And if you take the totals from each of those four areas, right, and add them together, then that number becomes what we call our cash conversion cycle. For some companies, it's as little as 14 days or maybe even less. Other companies, it can be 3-4 months or even longer. What we want to do is we want to get more cash into our hands and hold on to it longer. So we would take a deep dive into our cash conversion cycle. We would look at our cash flow and profit, and we would manage our cash, especially now, by the way, amidst the COVID-19 crisis. We want to look at our cash flow, the ins, the outs, and to some extent hoard cash, at least till we get through to the other side of the crisis. We want to look at how efficient our labor is, look at things like our labor efficiency, and use it as a guideline for onboarding staff or releasing staff as necessary without the negative effects of staff burnout or the negative effect of poor use of labor or poor productivity. We need to make sure everybody in the organization understand what products are profitable and which ones aren't, which ones need to be improved, and we need to talk about how we can create this thing called recurring revenue. How do we keep the cash register running over time in perpetuity? And also, how do we make money while we're sleeping, essentially? So these passive forms of revenue where that's appropriate. So we want to make sure, too, that our products are priced strategically so that we have a unique product offering that people will pay more for something that's unique, right? And something that separates us from everybody else in that space. The next area is talent. One of my favorites is, our people resources. And the question I often look at here is would you enthusiastically rehire everyone on your team? And that's a question I've asked hundreds of times, maybe even thousands of times in the last 14 years. Would you enthusiastically rehire everyone on your team? And I got to say, more times than not, probably 90-95% of the time, the CEO will look at me and then drop eye contact and say, well, no, not really. Well, why is that? How are we trying to compete in an ultra competitive time, right? If we've got people that aren't in the right position, doing the right things to get the right results. So some of the questions that we look at there are creating a culture of trust, results, and accountability. Accountability is a fun word, right? But you'll find that your best employees, your A players, or the people that are essential to your business, they want to be held accountable, and they want to hold you accountable, and they want others to be accountable as well. So creating a culture of accountability a culture of trust that produces sustainable, desirable outcomes and results. To do that, we want to make sure the organization's core purpose and the values are clear and visible, and we're hiring and firing and promoting and making decisions that are in alignment with our values. We want to make sure that we've communicated our vision concisely to all the stakeholders in the organization. You see, how can people hit a target that they can't see? So let's make sure that we clarify that vision, clarify that target, and make sure that all the people in the organization understand where we're going and what target we're trying to hit. The organization has identified key attributes of an ideal team player. So what does an ideal team player look like? Patrick Lencioni has a book called The Ideal Team Player, where he says we should be looking for employees and future employees that are humble, hungry, and smart. And he goes into great lengths to explain what that means. Do a regular assessment of talent. Are people aligned with our values, and are people productive in the current positions or the current role that they play in the organization? And we should reward those that are aligned with values and overachieving and overproducing, and we should coach those that are not, right? And perhaps discipline those that are not aligned with our values and underperforming. Those aren't always the funnest things that managers and leaders get to do, but they're the necessary things that managers and great leaders do. So, and every team member should participate in some form of learning. You see, what we learn today is the best insurance that we have for being relevant in the future. So not just our senior leaders and executives need to learn and grow in order for us to compete in the world in the future. It's every employee in our organization needs to constantly sharpen the saw, as Stephen Covey would say. The next area is customer, and our customer is at the heart of every organization. But does our customer life cycle drive revenue growth? Who's your who? That's the key question. Do you really know who your who is? Robert Bloom, our thought leader in this space, has a book out there called The Inside Advantage. And he has some great insights for all of us, as well as practical methods for identifying who our core customer is. Who's that customer that will pay us a premium for whatever product or service? Who's that customer that will refer us to other prospects? Who's that customer that will purchase more from us, right? So having a very clear understanding of what that core customer looks like. So from there, our strategy is generated around this central ideal core customer profile, right? It allows us to give a compelling value proposition to our prospects. It allows us to develop a brand promise and a secondary brand promise to that core customer. It becomes very essential and part of our marketing, becomes essential in our sales process. It becomes essential as part of our delivery process as we shape and form our business. Our brand is created in a compelling story format that speaks directly to our core customer. It elicits action from them. It's like flies to honey, they would say. When we craft a compelling story then it becomes very desirable to our core customer. So the customer acquisition to referral cycle has been defined, and we understand what the elements of the sale are, and we can develop a system or a process, which, by the way, I use system as an acronym. For a system is something that saves you stress, time, energy, and money. And a system is something that helps you eliminate the drama, as we've said in a couple of other points previous here. So coming up with some sort of a system to take prospects through the sales process and onboarding them as a customer to where they become raving fans of our company. Systems is really the last piece or the last attribute. And we'll talk just a little bit about that, but do our systems deliver value and the experience we need to drive our strategy? You see, from the surface, we've all seen the iceberg illustration, but put into using this illustration, I guess, putting into the 7 attributes, what the world tends to see about a business is our brand promise, our uniqueness, our promise to solve a problem that they have. But what they don't see are the systems in play that allow us to deliver on that promise, right? They don't see the leadership or the talent that we have that's building the systems. They don't see our strategy that causes us to be unique. They don't see the people and the talent that have been individually selected and trained and developed to do the right thing at the right time to get the right results. They don't see our execution disciplines. They don't necessarily know what our priorities are, what our metrics are, or how we're communicating. They just see the brand promise and see how that we're delivering above the surface. They don't know that we've taken great lengths to define who our core customer is and what the attributes are of that customer, and specifically target a specific customer when we came up with that brand promise. They don't really know or understand what our economic engine is or how do we make money. They just know that we've got a product or service that's desirable to them, right? And they're attracted to that as well as our brand promise. So the organization has a system to optimize its core processes. It has a system for how we manage change. We have a system for how we make decisions that are value-based against our values and desired outcomes. We have systems that determine what technology we're going to use and how we use that technology. Our key processes in each of the 7 attributes have been visually mapped. Many times we'll take people through this checklist or a similar checklist to precipitate discussion that brings clarity, that results in action, and those actions are prioritized so that we focus, align, and execute on our most important priorities. We have a culture that's agile, but it's also continuously improving, right? To make the customer experience a better experience. And that may require that we change our leadership. It may require that we adapt quickly to changing conditions. All of us have certainly seen this in the last 30 to 45 days with the COVID crisis. We've had to learn and adapt quickly, right? Or we get left behind. We need to make sure that that information and data is managed so that the organization can standardize, learn, and grow. And you must know this about me. My background is I have a degree in computer science and mathematics. And I have 30 plus years, 35 years working with senior leadership teams in management capacities. But I've always tried to make decisions based off of information and data, not on emotion. Make decisions based on logic, not necessarily emotions. So getting the information and the data to the right people at the right time so that we can make the right decisions. So these are just a few of the things that we look at in the 7 attributes. Again, the 7 attributes give us the framework and the tools that we need in order to diffuse the drama or to at least lessen it to some extent. Perhaps you've seen this story. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up. It knows it must run faster than the fastest lion or it'll be killed. Every morning the lion wakes up and it knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve to death. It doesn't matter whether you're a lion or gazelle, but when the sun comes up, you better be running. In business, we got to be running. In business, when the sun comes up, you better be learning. Again, let me say that again. When the sun comes up, you better be learning. So here's what I know is leaders are readers. And some of our A-player executives, our senior leaders, have been known to read 1, 2, 3 books a month. I have a friend, a colleague, and a client actually, that reads a book a week. And sometimes it's physically reading the book. Many times it's using Audible or Kindle. But here's the thing, leaders are readers. You want to be a leader today, you want to be relevant in the future, we need to read. We need to learn. We need to grow. If we want to double the size of our company, we need a 3x our rate of learning. What's the program that you have for you and your team and your organization to generate new ideas for growth? No one's ever achieved peak performance without a coach. A favorite quote of mine by Andre Agassi. And just to kind of summarize how we ditch the drama, how do we get the right framework, how do we get the best tools, and let's get a coach. But are you authentic, healthy, and aligned? Remember, put your oxygen mask on first. Can you state your strategy in a single sentence? If you can't, there's probably quite a bit of drama in your organization. Does your customer life cycle drive revenue growth? Are you driving profitability or are you just driving high revenue numbers? Are you driving the right kind of revenue growth? Do your people and processes convert top line revenue to strong bottom line profit? Remember, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity. Do you have all the cash you need to fuel growth? Your profitability fuels liquidity. Liquidity allows you to grow. Would you enthusiastically rehire everyone on the team? If not, then what are you doing about it? How are you bringing clarity around that? Are you assessing your talent? Are you getting the right people in the right seats on the bus, doing the right things to get the right results? And do your systems deliver the value and experience you need to drive your strategy? When we do that, when we get the right framework and we get the right tools, and when you got a coach helping with accountability, you can ditch the drama. So at this point, I just wanted to open up for questions to see if there were any questions.
Patrick, this is Allie. We haven't received any questions yet, but we do appreciate you being here with us today. Really great information. Definitely can be applied to many different business models. Obviously, a little bit different in the healthcare world, but still a lot of great information. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.